You know, most people think that death is the end of our existence. And all of us live with this quiet fear of death that really impacts many of our decisions we take. But what I witnessed in these final moments when my mom passed away really didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a homecoming. Maybe I can explain a little bit more about these moments when my mom passed away. I got this phone call from a stranger that my mom had been in an accident.
Welcome to the Defining Moments podcast, where leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes share the moments that changed everything. These are the stories behind resilience, purpose, and legacy. Now, let's dive into today's defining moment.
Most people spend so much time in their lives trying to avoid death. But what if understanding death is actually what teaches us how to live? And what if the fear that we carry every day is quietly stopping us from actually living? If you ever notice that about people, especially Americans, I feel like sometimes we tend to get so focused on the thought of dying that we forget to just live. So welcome to Defining Moments. Today I have a very special guest on the show, and this show is where we explore the moments that transform the way we see ourselves, our purpose, and the world around us, not through theory, but through experience. I'm Melanie Warner. I'm joined on today's guest by Claudia Schwarz. Thank you so much for being here, Claudia. I'm so happy to see you, all the way from Dominican Republic,
Melanie.
Here in our studio.
Melanie, what a pleasure to be with you here. And I know your show is something that really changes lives.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm so grateful that you're here. And I'm Melanie Warner. I'm the founder of Defining Moments Press, the host of the Defining Moments podcast and our new TV show, where we chat with authors, experts, corporate leaders, high-level coaches, and people who are turning their expertise into best-selling books, premium brands, and powerful media platforms. This episode is brought to you by Defining Moments Press. We're a US-based publishing company, and we help aspiring authors around the world to write, publish, and promote a nonfiction book to elevate their expertise, their brand, and create a meaningful impact and create income and impact. So, Claudia, thank you for being here today. Claudia is a transformational speaker and a spiritual explorer, I love that word, who helps people reconnect with peace, purpose, and what she calls the deeper reality of love. Because what does love mean? You know, it's not just contained. Like, I know I lost my son, and I still feel that love and connection to my son and to his soul. I know that there's a connection, that mother-son love never dies. It is a deep soul connection, and I can feel it every day still. And even though he's been gone for many years. And so, you know, Claudia's message didn't come from just going to school or reading books. It came from a profound experience. And you're going to hear more about that today and how that defining moment led to what she's doing today and this amazing thing that she is teaching people from all over the world. So, Claudia, tell us a little bit more about your defining moment.
Yeah, very good question. It truly transformed my being. The moment my mother died, I stopped being afraid of death. And it was that moment that I started living more fully. And when my mom passed away and was in an accident suddenly, I delved deeper in this understanding about death and dying and how it can truly impact us when we understand more about death.
So you've said that the day that your mother died was the day that you stopped being afraid of death. Take me more into that moment. What was that like for you I know there were some circumstances behind that where, it was a shock, obviously. It was not something that was expected. And What did you witness that changed your perspective towards death forever?
Most people think that death is the end of our existence. And all of us live with this quiet fear of death that really impacts many of our decisions we take. But what I witnessed in these final moments when my mom passed away really didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a homecoming. Maybe I can explain a little bit more about these moments when my mom passed away. I got this phone call from a stranger that my mom had been in an accident, and I rushed to the hospital, and only to find that nobody could answer my questions at this moment about my mom. And I sat down and started to practice an ancient mantra. It is a sacred sound my mom had taught me many years ago. And by doing the spiritual technique, it truly helped me to find an expanded awareness and inner peace. And in this moment, suddenly, I saw in my inner vision my mom in the inner worlds. And she was involved in this incredible, brilliant light. It was a light that wasn't like a worldly light. It was a presence of love, and it was a feeling of divine guidance in this moment. And when I had this vision, it was a reality. I had stepped in these inner worlds, and it suddenly changed this perception and the way I was thinking about death and dying forever.
Wow. So you had this profound experience after your mother passed away. You were able to feel that connection with her and redefine what it felt like to leave this physical realm and still feel that connection to her.
Yeah, it didn't feel really like an ending. It felt like a homecoming. It felt like, oh, here is just another door. What if death wasn't an ending, but just a doorway?
Yeah, like she just moved somewhere else.
Yeah, a doorway in soul's evolution. And this experience didn't end there. Later on, I was called into the emergency room, and my mom was still, at this time, had not died. She was still in the way out. It was a transformational process. And when I first came into the emergency room, it looked like my mom was still okay. She just had a small bruise on her head. But the face of the doctors told a completely different story. And I knew in this moment, my mom was on her way out to a different realm. And when I sat next to her, she took her last breath. Mm-hmm. And in this moment, I started doing this spiritual exercise again, this spiritual practice that expanded my inner vision. It is a love song to God. It is a sacred mantra, and it's 2 letters, HU. And while singing this, I saw my mother again. But this time, not lying in the hospital bed. She was in the light, dancing in the light with her arms raised, joyful.
And this was minutes later.
This was just minutes later. Wow. After I had been called into the emergency room, and she had basically, taken her last breath. And in that moment, she was standing in this light, and I had seen this joyful dance many, many times over during my life. It was her way to say goodbye and that everything was okay.
Wow. So she was able to send that message through this. I guess I'm trying to, for those that are listening or trying to understand what that felt like emotionally. You saw this vision, and it was where you felt like you had entered another realm. Like, tell us more about what you actually saw, and and how it changed the way you lived.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Melanie, because, in my spiritual practice, I understand, that we believe we have a soul. But instead, I had been experiencing for many years, for many decades, spiritual exercises where I understood that we are soul. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin says it very well. He was a priest and scientist, and he said, we are not human beings living a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings living a human we are spiritual beings living a human experience.
I love that. I've heard that quote before, and I never knew who actually said that, but I love that. I think it's so true. And when you realize that, it just makes you feel, this is why sometimes you have a soul connection with somebody, and you're not meant to feel that with everybody. And I think that there's certain family members that we definitely have that ability to continue to feel their presence. And, a lot of people, they argue, no matter what religious background people have, people believe in angels, they believe in the soul. And so when you start thinking about that connection, that soul that is the wisest part of us, it is the part that lives forever. So even when that physical body is gone, I think there's hope in knowing that we can still have that soul connection with somebody. And it's such a beautiful thing to give people hope that are either dealing with losing somebody, they're in the process, maybe they have a bad diagnosis or have something that is they're fearful about. But when you start thinking about, that fear of death and how it's quietly creating fear of life, and when you realize the bigger picture of what's really there for all of us, it can give you that peace and that comfort. How was that showing up for you before this experience?
Yeah, well, for me, after my mom died, I truly understood, there's 20,000 near-death experience studies that doctor and scientist Dr. Kubler-Elizabeth Ross has done. And she shares in these experiences that consciousness exists beyond our body. And that most people, those who have passed on to the other realm and have come back from that near-death experience, are aware that there's come back with the realization that there's a deeper purpose to our lives. And that is the true real purpose is to expand and evolve in love, kindness, and
it's compassion. I'm getting emotional because I had a near-death experience. I've had two. The last one was very deep. And I came about 90 seconds away from dying. I was bleeding out at the hospital, and to where the doctor said, this is life-threatening, you might not make it. And I had such a profound spiritual experience that day of feeling the most love and the most joy I've ever felt in my life, that it was hard to explain. I couldn't even talk to anyone about this for about a year afterwards without bawling my eyes out. And it was something that I thought, how can I even explain this to people? Because it almost felt like how I imagined it was I felt someone holding me, and I felt like it was what I would imagine what a baby feels like when their parents are holding them with love, right? And I just felt so safe, even though I was terrified. And I thought I was going to die. But then there was this moment of just pure love and peace that I knew at that moment everything was going to be okay. Whether I lived or not, I had so much peace about it. And I didn't know that my son was going to pass away. So that profound experience was preparing me to hold my son when he took his last breath and be able to give him that love and let him know it was okay. You know what I mean? And it was just this moment of preparing me for something that I didn't know was to come. And I thought I was dying. And I didn't know I was preparing myself to help my son walk through that journey. And I think that experience made me feel closer to him, to where I can feel him anytime I need to feel him. I just feel like he's always right here, And I think that the people that have lost somebody, it's that feeling of disconnection, I'm never going to see them again. That certainty, the finality of that, and to have this hope and know that their soul is still living in a way, it's still connected. And, I like to say that we're all with God. They're on that side and we're on this side. But you can feel that connection with this person. I'm sure you still feel it with your mother as well.
I love that experience, how you said you were prepared, because truly if you look into after my mom passed away and I had this experience, I investigated it a little bit more, like with a scientist, and neurosurgeon, Ibn Alexander. He exactly explains that same thing you're just saying. It's a realm of love, and that truly what our truest existence is, that love is the fabric of our existence.
I remember there was a book that helped me as well that I read after I lost my son, and it was called Closer to the Light, and it was it was a scientist, Melvin Morse, I think it was. I read this a long time ago. And he was a scientist and a doctor that was interviewing children that had had near-death experiences. And I don't know why, but that book gave me so much peace to understand the science behind what had happened with these kids and what these kids saw when they came to death and then came back to life. And every single one of them, no matter what their influences were, there were infants and babies that talked about the spiritual experience and the light and how beautiful it felt. You know what I mean? And I think if the heavens cracked open and we were told this is how it really is, that there would be a lot of people who would just choose not to be here if they really knew like how beautiful it was, right? And so I think that's the key, is when you see how people are struggling here on this planet in life, and they feel like they have to carry this heavy burden, especially of grief. I know so many people who are having a hard time living their life because they're so focused on how somebody died instead of focusing on how they lived.
True.
So what advice would you give to people that are stuck in that space of not being able to let go, but still not knowing how to connect with that person that's passed on?
I do have actually a story about this, because right after my mom died, I was really heartbroken and struck with grief for the next weeks and months and months. I was in the spiral of sadness and grief. And, even so, I was practicing my spiritual exercises, and I was very connected with my mom. She was so close to my heart, and she was like a sister, and my spiritual body, so to speak. And at this time, I was trying to see her again in my dreams, working with my dreams. And we usually were very connected, and I had expected her to show up again. But what happened is I wouldn't see her. And only months later, I saw her again in my dreams, and I said, "Mom, what happened? I was expecting to see you. I wanted to know how you're doing." And her answer might truly surprise you, because at this moment, she said, "You were too sad. Where I'm at is a high frequency of love, and so we couldn't meet." And for me, that was such an insight of knowing, that truly those who pass on, it's part of a cosmic pattern and their golden contract they have made with life. And it is an evolution, and it is not, a loss per se for this person, because they have just, moved on to the next step in their soul's plan and evolution.
And that journey and elevation. So I know after this time in your life, you were diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So what was the first thought that went through your mind when you got that diagnosis?
Yeah, that was really interesting. I said, okay, what could I be at peace if it was my time to go at this moment? And fear set in this moment. And instead of really focusing on that fear, I made a decision that moment, and I decided to shift to the attitude of gratitude instead of feeding into that fear, like giving thanks to all these, to life itself, to all the people I love, and to truly cherish those golden moments of having this past, this journey of traveled and still traveling. And whatever happened, I would embrace it with gratitude.
So you chose not to surrender to fear. So what shifted internally for you?
That was a huge step for me. When I stopped being afraid, I took a very drastic decision. I told my doctor, she had scheduled surgery already for me. And I said, I would like to try a natural healing method. And she just looked at me with this look and said, I truly, truly respect you for thinking you could heal this with natural healing methods. But, these nodes are far too big. They have to be removed by surgery. And so being really not in a state of fear, I could take another decision and could take other opportunities. And I said, well, nothing is be lost. She gave me 4 weeks, and I started my own process of tuning in with life. I took 4 weeks off of work, moved into the woods of Maine, and started, my own healing journey with spiritual exercises and envisioning, spiritual guides, avatars who would help me have the courage, who would feed me with love, and who truly, would hold the space for me. And I envisioned myself in a spiritual golden wisdom temple being radiated with light, especially on the thyroid area. And besides this, I shifted really from, having a stressful life, of resting, of taking walks, of, being uplifted by, the people who surrounded me, changing my nutrition. So there was a combination of many things, but part of it was also to shift from that experience of fear to the opportunity that healing was possible.
So do you feel that love healed you?
That's a really good, I think if we are really sick, it's an absence of love in some way. And so by feeding us, nourishing us, also spiritually with the presence and realigning again with the divine love, that truly is a healing factor.
You talk about inner guidance. How do people learn to trust that voice instead of fear? Because fear, it's so much easier to just give into fear, especially with a diagnosis or, they say death, disease, and divorce. You know what I mean? Those are like the biggest stressors for humankind. So how do people learn to trust the voice instead of the fear?
It is really just a shift of attention. Instead of really listening to the outer noises, to the news that constantly bombard us with negative news and really with fear. They induce fear all the time. It is really realignment, and it is a decision we have to take every single day. If I allow myself to nourish myself with the positive and with the, let's say, the divine, and tune into prayer, contemplation, meditation, and take those moments for us to really explore this inner realms. And I think it's a process of trusting your inner guidance. You start with little things, and you could ask a question and trust that this answer will always come. Sooner or later, God will always answer your questions. It is just a matter of how aware am I, and do I really trust it?
Was there a moment during your healing journey that you realized I'm becoming a different person through this process?
Absolutely. Once after these 4 weeks, 4 weeks, I went back to the clinic and had to do another sonograph just to check, before the surgery, how things are sitting. So this specialist who was taking this sonograph came out to me, and I was expecting the results. But what she said to me, she said, "I'm really sorry, but we have to do this again. You look like a different person." And she said, "But this time we're going to take another machine." So we were back into the where the sonographs are taken, and she just shook her head and came out later with the results with a little sticky note, and she said, "Doctor, call me when you see this patient." And coming back to my doctor, she just looked at my files, picked up the phone at this time, and canceled my surgery.
Wow.
And she said, "Whatever you did, it worked."
Wow. So you didn't have to have surgery to remove the nodes?
Not at all. And I never took a medication for my thyroid.
Unbelievable. Wow. So you went from having, getting diagnosed with thyroid cancer to them telling you have to have surgery. She wouldn't recommend alternative treatments. And you were able to use this technique to help heal yourself.
Correct.
And how's your health today?
I feel this really was a defining moment in my life, because I started to realize the only person responsible for my health is myself. It's me. I cannot pass it on to any other people, to medical treatments, etc., and find ways that I trust to really realign, because I think every type of illness is a type of disalignment from this divine love we so readily can receive if we have the right techniques.
Well, you look amazing, even here with me in person. You have this radiating energy and light coming from you. You can feel it, you can see it. It's just, you seem to be extremely healthy. So I would say whatever you're doing, more people need to be doing. Now, you said that you stopped watching the news, you stopped feeding fear into your mind. How much of modern life disconnects us from our true selves?
Yeah, I think especially, the way our modern life goes with the internet, with, scrolling, with watching TV shows that are violent. All of this, disconnects us from, this true divine love that really pours into our lives if we open our eyes, and instead of, binge watching Netflix or something, we could also take a walk in nature. And because nature really helps us realign again, because there's harmony and peace in nature,
And you can listen to a podcast while you're walking, people.
Correct.
So what's the biggest fear you see that is quietly controlling people today?
I think most of it is fear of death and what's happening in our world, the chaos that's right now happening there. And I think the most important part is, that we make sure our own internal world is in harmony and is realigned with our truest purpose on life, to really expand and evolve in love, kindness, and compassion.
So for somebody who's listening, who feels overwhelmed, disconnected, or anxious, what's one simple practice that they can begin today?
I would like to share this sacred mantra that has helped me over and over again in many of my life situations. It is a sacred sound that has been used for centuries. And what it does, it really helps us to come back to inner peace. And it's very simple, and it might defy our minds because it is so simple. Mm-hmm. It's only 2 letters, HU, and it is sung long drawn out. And maybe Melanie, I can demonstrate it with the viewers here. So our attention is really in our heart center, and we open our hearts and we sing this love song to God, that expands our awareness and brings us back to inner peace, just like this. Thank you, Melanie.
Ooh, that's so easy. And it just instantly shifts. It's like, I remember, it's like some people that say, and they do that, but there's that vibration. And I love that it's like you're saying you. Like, it's almost like you're saying you to bring yourself back to you.
Yeah, very good reminder. It is like a tuning fork into this God sound, basically.
That's beautiful. I love that. Okay, so you have to remember that. That's a trick. And I love mantras. I really think, it's there's they say that worry is like negative prayer, right? And so when you can you program out the news and all the doom and gloom and the Chicken Little stuff, and you choose what goes into your body, what goes into your brain, how you process certain things, and it really does make you feel healthier, because you don't just feel like you're this receiver of all this anxious stuff that's going out in the universe lately. And I think that's where so many people feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, and more so, we become also the sender of a positive vibration and a positive frequency, and people can feel it even if you don't speak a word.
What does living aligned actually feel like?
Part of living aligned for me really means step into our truest purpose, into understanding, why are we here? And what is it we really want to give back to the world? And, having been an entrepreneur for the longest time, I was a hotelier in my career and was running a beachfront hotel and restaurant and a store and properties and so on. After my mom's death, I truly realized that it was time for me to shift my priority and also my career. And a few years later, I definitely stepped out of this busy lifestyle to dedicate my life, rededicate and reconsecrate my life to really become in alignment with my true purpose, and that was to share what truly matters, in life, like, realigning with this divine current.
So you moved from Germany to Dominican Republic, right? You ran a beachfront resort while still doing deep spiritual work. So how do you balance spirituality with real world responsibilities without coming across as woo-woo?
That's a really good question. And I think, once you understand that all the universal spiritual laws really support leadership and entrepreneurship. If you look at the greatest spiritual leaders, some of them, they truly live what they say, that they, they live their purpose and they want to give back to life in a much larger way.
So, Claudia, is there anything else that you want to share with our audience today, just about your experience or something that you're working on right now? If people want to follow you or work with you in some way, what's the best way for someone who wants to go deeper on this and understand it more? What's the best step for them?
Yeah, we are offering a curated retreat in the Dominican Republic on the North Coast for those who really want to come back and realign, restore their health, and come to this point of stillness where we are just connecting to that very moment, to the now. And where we do detox, breath work, the sacred chant when the sun rises, bathing in the ocean, wellness treatments, and chef who really caters to the detox program we have designed. And this retreat is going to happen in February beginning of February in the Dominican Republic in a luxury resort. And for those who are interested, they can find more on my website, ClaudiaSchwarz.info.
ClaudiaSchwarz.info. No T, by the way. It's a German spelling, Schwartz with no T. And you can click on the link below in the show notes. And here's the thing. I was in Dubai recently, and I was at the Museum of the Future. It was set in the year 2070. And it said, in the year 2070, looking back, the biggest threat to humanity was not any type of virus or anything. It was actually from the year 2030, said for the last, so it was referencing from the perspective of 2070, looking back 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
The greatest threat was mental health.
Oh, yes.
And so in the future, there's going to be sound healing spaces and rooms. So I think that you're ahead of your time in the sense that you're creating these opportunities for people now to become aware. And it's never too late to shift something. And the first step for anybody who's struggling or feeling overwhelmed is to just have, awareness. Is just understanding that you have this awareness that there's another way to do something. So if you have a diagnosis, if you have something that doesn't feel like it aligns with you, there is a solution. And I love that you found a non-medical solution. I'm a really big fan of alternative medicine as well. And I do believe that, your body believes every word you say. And I always tell people, if you don't take care of your body, where are you going to live? And
Correct.
so you are responsible for what goes in it, what goes on it, what goes in your brain, and so the more responsibility we can take, the better. So those are amazing tools. Thank you so much for being here. And I do have a quick, as we're wrapping up, I love sharing a mystery guest. And this is you guys, I can't explain how this happens. It is divine. There's no other explanation. Because I'm going to share a story of somebody that you might know them publicly, but you don't know the history. You don't know how they suffered. So this particular woman, before she changed the way the world understood death, before her work became required reading in hospitals, in universities, and grief counseling around the world, she was simply asking questions that nobody wanted to ask. You see, back in the 1960s, death was something that was just hidden away. It was almost like this bad thing that happened that nobody talked about, right? And patients were often isolated. They weren't allowed to be surrounded by family. Families avoided the conversation. Mm-hmm. Doctors focused on treatment, not humanity. And terminally ill patients, well, many of them were just dying alone, not physically, but emotionally, because no one wanted to speak honestly about what was happening. And this woman noticed something that others ignored, that the dying weren't afraid because death existed. They were afraid because no one would truly see them. Mm. So she started sitting beside terminally ill patients and listening, really listening. And what she discovered changed her forever, because again and again, patients spoke about peace, about clarity, about love, and about unfinished emotional truths. And she realized that death was not just a medical event. It wasn't some type of life sentence. It was a deeply human and spiritual transition, not just a scientific thing of the body just stops. And the more time she spent with people who were dying, the less afraid of death she became, because she saw something so profound that the people that were closest to death often understood life the most clearly. And her groundbreaking work eventually became the book On Death and Dying, introducing the world to the 5 stages of grief. And that deeper message underneath all her work was this: when we stop denying death, we finally begin living more honestly, more presently, more compassionately, more awake. Because the awareness that life is temporary doesn't make life smaller, it makes it sacred. And that is the defining moment of Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who you happened to mention earlier. Yeah. And I didn't know you were going to talk about her. So it's meant to be, right? And the thing is, when I had my own near-death experience, it gave me peace. Even though I was starting to panic thinking I was dying, the beautiful, peaceful feeling that I felt that was so confirming and validating and gave me such certainty about something beyond this life. It made me never be afraid to die again, but I was more definitely afraid of living as if I was just waiting to die. And I never wanted to live with regrets, which is why I finished my book. It's what drives me every day out of gratitude of being here and being alive, especially because my son can't be here. And I feel like every single one of us, if we're here on this earth and we have a pulse, then we're still operating out of purpose, and we can still be connected to our loved ones. And you've been a beautiful example of that, Claudia. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, and what's so powerful about her story, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, is that being close to death didn't make her afraid of life. It made her more present for it. And I think that's the greatest gift that we get when we lose someone we love, is just learning to be present. So, Claudia, how much of your own transformation came from realizing that life is far more precious and fleeting than most of us allow ourselves to admit?
Yeah, the biggest transformation for me was once I realized this, even so I had known there's more to life than what we see and that there's a continuation of life. Even so I knew that, but experiencing it, like you said, this deep love and this understanding that, we have a deeper life purpose firsthand made me change truly my priorities. The way I looked at my career and at my lifestyle definitely shifted from that moment. And I decided, I really want to live this life to the fullest and take advantage of this opportunity here to evolve as a spiritual being. And it made me step so much more profound in giving back to life, in creating workshops, in teaching a one-on-one, or in sharing, my own spiritual teaching and my spiritual principles that are universal to all those who are ready for it and who are awakening to this bigger picture of life.
Well, thank you so much for being vulnerable, for sharing your story about your mother. And I guess I could say thank you to your mother, because I feel like she's here. And I think she'd be extremely proud of you and how you've taken this personal heartbreak that could feel like a tragedy and look at it as the purpose behind not only what her soul was put here to do, but now what your soul is doing to help elevate others on this planet as well. And I think when you start thinking about how healing begins the moment that fear loses its grip. And that's how really, truly you were able to heal yourself through love and light. So thank you for being here today. And thank you all for joining us. If this resonates with you, do something about it. Share it with people. Make sure you subscribe and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be watching on YouTube, so that you get notifications every time we actually drop a new podcast. And please watch out for our TV show that's also coming out later this year. You'll see it on all major streaming platforms. Again, I want to thank you all for being here. I'm Melanie Warner from Defining Moments. I want to thank our guest, Claudia Schwarz. Thank you for being here today. And we'll see you next time,
everyone. Thank you so much, Melanie.
All right. Take care, you guys.
Thanks for listening to the Defining Moments podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.